beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. In this video I'll be comparing two different spunding valves that I feel both deserve your attention if you are already enjoying the benefits of pressure fermentation or are planning on getting started. This current video just focuses on the spunding valves themselves. For more information about pressure fermentation and spunding valves, do check out the two videos shown on screen now after viewing this one. Because this is a review of sorts at least, here is my disclaimer. Please feel free to pause the video to read this in full. In short, I should point out that I work in the homebrew industry for an independent distributor who actually sells all of these products. I have tested them in various forms and I am happy with their performance. The purpose of this video is to simply establish which is best for you. I will not be making this decision for you. I will simply be presenting the facts so that you can work out which is the best fit. Let's start with a quick look at both types of products side by side so that you can get a general feel before we go into much more detail on each. The Blowtie products are supplied by Kegland, whereas the Spundit V2 is supplied by Homebrewer Lab. Shown on screen now is the Blowtie with separate gauge model along with the Spundit V2. Both types are shown in their most basic configurations. As you can see, the Blowtie has a much larger gauge and in general covers a larger area. The gauge is also protected with a protective surround, unlike the Spundit V2 gauge. I have found both of these gauges to be as accurate as each other. I have now added to the mix another Blowtie version that has an integrated gauge. The gauge on this model is a little less accurate than the other two, but it certainly is up to the task, and certainly is the smallest of these three models. Let's get straight into price. Here is a price comparison in various currencies so that you can consider your budget. These were obtained online during the making of this video. If you are watching this at a different time, then they could well have changed, of course. Sorry if I have not included your currency. Please check your own marketplace online for pricing details, but the mix of pricing here should certainly give you a fair idea of what to expect. One thing to point out here is that the Blowtie shown here as Blowtie 1 does not include a ball lock fitting or silicone hosing for connection, so as such this is not its final full price. As you will note, this version of the Blowtie is still the best price of this bunch, and the Spundit 2 is definitely the most costly. This is partly due to materials and partly to do with production quantities. The Spundit 2 is mostly made of anodized aluminium or aluminum if you're in the United States. Aluminium is anodized to increase corrosion resistance and also to allow it to be coloured or dyed. The Spundit V2 is handmade in a small construction setting. On the flip side, the Blowties are mass produced on a factory level and are constructed using mostly food grade acetal, which is an engineering plastic commonly found in the food industry and also within home food products. I guess for most people they will be able to afford any of these products, but it also comes down to what you think something is worth to you. All of these products can be used for pressure fermentations as well as pressure transfers. The very good news is that all of these devices use the all-important diaphragm valves as opposed to poppet valves which were commonplace on budget devices in the not-so-distant past. Diaphragm style of spunding valves have a much wider surface area, which is the diaphragm itself. This allows the sealing to be far more precise and makes them suitable for controlling pressure in a wide array of applications from low to high. For this reason, this style of valve is widely used for regulation and release of pressure for many different types of applications where reliable fine control is required. This includes regulators used for pressure control of kegs. Let's now look at each of these products with more detail, starting with the Spundit V2, which is now shown in its full configuration. Despite being new to my channel, this is a product that I have now tested with over 10 different fermentations. It is notably heavier than the Blowtie devices due to its construction. I haven't dropped one of these yet, but I do wonder how it would fare due to its weight. Please do let us all know in the comments section if you have dropped one and how it did. The Spundit V2 has two key notable features that set it apart from the Blowties by standard. Firstly, there is this built-in, as they call it, thermometer, which actually allows it to bubble like an airlock. If you buy your Spundit from the original producer, then this is an optional extra. However, some homebrew stores sell it like this by standard. Here is a visual on how this looks. Essentially this shows you that the unit is blowing off extra pressure. I guess you could say that this gives some familiarity to those that are used to having an airlock used in regular fermentations, and of course a visual guide that you have activity. Like an actual airlock though, this is only part of the equation, and as such cannot be relied on as a full guide as to what is happening. Only a gravity reading from a hydrometer is the surefire way of establishing what is really going on. Another notably different feature from what we are used to seeing with spunding valves in general is a dial system that is colour branded with a view to being able to quickly dial in roughly the level of pressure that is desired. There are two bars that are most interest to us as homebrewers, which I have listed on screen with their colour codes and approximate values. The top dial is turned clockwise to allow more pressure and counterclockwise to release pressure. I find this to be saving a little time because you can use the bands to give yourself a head start in dialing in the pressure you want. You will still need to do some fine tuning though, just as you would with any other spunding valve. Unless of course you manage to not move the dial from one fermentation to the next and the same level of pressure is desired. But once again, this also applies to other spunding valves too. When it comes to cleaning, the diaphragm valve itself can be accessed by removing the 4 screws here found in the usual places around such a valve. With this top piece out of the way, you then have access to the valve, which can be removed and cleaned using warm water and star sand on the advice of the inventor. However, due to the main construction material of aluminium, you will need to avoid anything acid-based for cleaning, as this will erode the aluminium despite the fact that it has been anodized. The inventor suggests cleaning the main body with hot water only when needed. In terms of the standard pressure range offered by the Spundit V2, you can go from 0 to 30 psi or between 0 and 2 bar, which more than covers homebrewing applications. However, for those that want this for other tasks too, then the unit is capable of withstanding pressures of double this amount, and a new gauge can be fitted to accommodate these higher levels. If you are interested in this, then you should take this up directly with Homebrewer Lab. They are also able to custom build Spundits in further areas on request. Furthermore, the Spundit V2 has an auxiliary port that when connected to another fermenter will hold the same level of pressure as you have on the gauge. A jumper cable to support this is not included by standard usually, but can be obtained separately. All in all, this is a nice spunding valve with some user-dependent, potentially interesting extra features compared to other devices of its type. It is well put together and feels sturdy enough, though as I mentioned previously, I'm yet to drop it to see how it holds up in this regard. It certainly works well and has brought me no issues in my testing. Naturally, its price is quite a jump from its main competitor, the Blowtie, which will be, I would imagine, a fair factor in your decision-making process, especially if you need multiple spunding valves. Let's now take a closer look at Blowtie. The Blowtie is available currently in 2 different configurations. Here is the original. Despite being made of mostly plastic, the Blowtie feels solid in the hand and in my butterfingers has proven itself to be very tolerant to the hardest of drops onto solid floors. It simply bounces. Here is a closer look at the version of the Blowtie with the integrated gauge. I have been using both versions of the Blowtie for a large number of fermentations and I have not had one single issue. It is fair to say that the integrated dial version is not as accurate as its bigger brother, but it is not far off. And I've been just as satisfied by all of the MBers that it has spunded for me compared to the others here. So you may be wondering about the thermometer, or a bubbler as I am calling it here. Unlike the Spundit's inventor, Kegland, the company behind the Blowtie, see little value in having a thermometer, but do produce parts that allow you to set one up yourself should this feature be a desirable one for you. The parts required here are low priced and I'm sharing the part numbers and product names on screen now. You will need an extra ball lock and fittings to connect it all together, of course. Should you want a 90-degree stainless steel ball lock, then these are readily available in the market and Kegland are a core manufacturer of these, so to obtain one will not be an issue. And here this is in action. The bottle used here is a standard supermarket bought 330ml bottle that had some fizzy water in it when it first started its life, and I have simply repurposed it here. The T-piece will accept any container within a standard bottle thread size. This is not Kegland's intended use for these parts as I mentioned earlier, but it certainly works well with either of the Blowtie models. Just in case you are wondering, the usual use for these parts is that you can transfer a beer from a keg under pressure into a plastic bottle of your choice and run this plastic bottle as a very budget-friendly mini keg. Just remember to keep hold of those bigger soda bottles after finishing them and you are set. In terms of setting your pressure, there are no colour bandings to help dial in a Blowtie, but I have never spent long adjusting mine to the level desired, and once set you can walk away with confidence that this setting will remain, unlike those rather annoying poppet valve varieties. The easiest way for setup is to simply almost unscrew the yellow controller and then you will have 0 psi. Then once you have pressure from your yeast, start tightening up the valve in half turns until you reach the level you require. This process is identical on both of the Blowtie types, and something I have become very used to doing one-handed. Let's now look at cleaning. The Blowties can be disassembled fully by simply undoing the screws on the face of the units. The Blowtie units are constructed from food-grade acetal, which means they can be cleaned and sanitized by a large amount of different chemicals used by homebrewers and commercial brewers alike. In fact, this applies to the whole unit, except for the gauge, of course, on the integrated model. It has to be said that in general you will not really need to clean the entire body, unless you find that beer has penetrated the spunding valve, but it is nice to be able to clean all of the items around the diaphragm valve as shown here. Let's now look at pressure range. By standard, my integrated gauge model goes from 0 to 30 psi, which equates to on the high end to 2 bar. Whereas on the separate gauge model this goes from 0 to 40 psi, which at the high end is 2.75 bar. Both of these units are ready to accept higher pressure levels. Here is a breakdown of the different gauge sizes available for both. Kegland predict that pressure levels are around 100 psi or beyond would be no issue, but naturally this is way higher than a homebrewer would ever need. In conclusion, the Blowties offer their own advantages compared to other spunding valves on the market and pack a nice range of features for the price, along with a dependability that I have come to place high levels of trust in. Do not be fooled into thinking that a plastic construction is a disadvantage when it comes to a spunding valve, because there are various different types of plastic out there and this is a specialist engineering type, not the type found on a cheap child's toy. This is nicely backed up with how damage resistant these are from drops. I also really like that these can be stripped down fully and cleaned using a range of chemicals from my shelf. As you can no doubt tell, I am a fan of all of these products, but for different reasons. No matter which of these you choose, I am confident that you will be happy with your purchase as long as you have made your selection based on your own requirements. I have done my very best to cover all key areas here to present the main facts so that you can make an informed choice. If you are looking for more information, then please let me know in the comment section of this video. I would also be interested in hearing people's own selection choices, along with their reasons why. Whichever way you go, I hope this video helps you get there easier. I do hope that you found this video useful, informative and interesting. If so, why not consider liking and subscribing? For further support you can join the channel's Facebook group, and if you would like to support the channel then check out the channel's merchandise store, as all profits go back into the channel. Until next time, happy brewing!